Welcome to our second hour of Smart Men's Business, 2 minutes past 8 a.m. Today is the very last day of the week, and for most of you must be excited. But regardless, this has to be your most productive day as we find means of getting to enjoy the prolonged weekend. Yes, I understand that. Well, here in Smart Men's Business, we're always here to get you inspired and motivated as you start your day, as you open up that shop, as you open up that office. We are always here to get you motivated, get your head in the game. The goal is the bag. The goal is to walk away with something today. Well, let's first get into it, and I will be right back. Well, the beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take that away from you. Whatever you have read in the books, whatever you're reading, whatever you are learning from other people, that is first-hand information. And please pass it on to other people. That's how you continue to, that is how you'll be even actually remembered. Yeah. Well, of course, as we continue to celebrate women and recognize the different achievements they have made, most women have evolved over time, I remember growing up and seeing the likes of Oprah Winfrey, the likes of Tyra Banks, into the fashion industry, and then them being renowned people there hosting the red carpets and all that. So we've seen potential women, from the likes, starting from Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa.
Yes, she's an oracle of women, I must say.
Yeah, quite a great inspiration.
Great inspiration.
In various fields, depending on what somebody uses her advice to, incorporate it in their day-to-day decision making, living life, making the choices, the choices we make in life, all based on that principles.
Yeah.
Observing. You see, observing someone's pattern of life is quite important. Like we mentioned earlier, it doesn't mean that you have to copy everything they do, but observe a pattern and let it be applied to you in your own version.
And of course, here in Uganda as well, we've seen a number of figures rising up and being vocal, and we can't forget the late Cecilia Gual. Yeah, she was really vocal.
Yeah,
politically, even in other aspects of religion. And I must say, some people found her, an inspiration other than the side of politics, interaction actually. If you were keen enough, people used to, because she was knowledgeable. Sometimes you have to put some differences aside and learn from a few people.
From a few people. Absolutely, because this is something that has hindered growth, also especially in our societies. We attach lots of cultural, can I call it, these cultural attachments, which have also impacted us, in the world of living. We've been talking about women. It's a Women's Week. Tomorrow is the Women's International Women's Day, and we've been talking about how the cultural barriers have actually led women not to participate effectively in community activities. I'm talking about activities that are responsible for transforming social and economic lives of people. So I think we ought to, of course, this is what defines you, the culture and all that, but it shouldn't be a blinding factor when it comes to extremism. Culture extremism.
Yeah, it's too much. And of course, I've been seeing in here in the papers how, you know, government is trying to deal with female genital mutilation. I thought that was something that was phased out a few years ago, like very many years ago. And then we see that some cultures do still practice some rituals, you know. So definitely it's, for women, it's quite traumatizing because it's not... Well, we shall get into other things, but then, yeah, I really respect the women that have become a forefront or other young girls and ladies out there. They are more vocal, they are more confident, you know, because listen, what gives us the thought of we cannot do what men cannot do? We have the same physical structures. Yeah, we have the same arms. We have the same.
But the thinking capacities are different.
Yeah, but the thinking capacities. But we've seen girls who have. Strength. Yes, we've seen girls who have IQs that are more than men's.
Well, that is IQ. I think it's something that is it's a mindset issue, and because what people will call IQ based, they have invested in knowledge to know certain things, and those things become natural to them. Well, now heading into other discussions, we're talking about the European Union, the EU-Uganda Trade Summit that is really transparent lately, and seeing the European Investment Bank that is said to offer 420 billion to Ugandan micro businesses, because we know they constitute the biggest percentage, and they are mainly run by women. And they're about because we know that 90% are small and intermediary enterprises. On the 90%, 58% are owned by women. So this is quite a chance in terms of accessing these funds. And the beauty of it is that all these funds that are being put by the European Investment Bank, 50% of these funds are actually going to be supporting women-driven projects in that line. Now, of course, a statement from the European Investment Bank says that the investment represents the European Investment Bank's global's largest ever financial loan to any country in the African, Caribbean, Pacific region. So we are lucky. This is the first time of it being this big in terms of that. And we've also experienced, you know, we've been talking about trade deficits for the country Uganda, but in 2022, a report clearly reveals that Uganda's trade with Europe, the turnover has increased to about 1.5 billion. But yeah, we improved because we exported 800 million and we imported 700 million. So there is quite a...
The difference is not that much.
Not that much, but at least it's better that...
We are exporting more.
We exported more. Yeah. So we can beat that figure if more support is given to the micro enterprises, because most of the products that we are dealing with, the export business is relying on small and intermediary enterprises in this country. Yeah.
So we should actually harness and, you know, get more times. Of course, he actually cautioned them not to interfere into our politics. He can't rule that out. As he called upon collaboration between the European countries and Africa as a whole, not only in Uganda, but also Africa as a whole, to push, you know, for economic growth. Well, of course, Morris, who is the board chairman, Rakakamba, of the Uganda Investment Authority, and of course today I think we shall be having the former
PRL.
Well, of course, there's been challenges which included geopolitical tensions, inflation pressures, of course, posing uncertainties. And of course, Uganda still remains committed to fostering economic cooperation and connectivity, particularly with the European Union. Yes.
You know, recently we are pushed out of the AGOA, and it seemed I was actually wondering what was causing this burden in terms of people getting scared. But now we're seeing quite these opportunities that are coming in from Europe with us dealing with them. But then it brings me to a point that as much as we are talking about these funds that are coming in into Ugandan micro enterprises, what capacity building do we have as yet to ensure that we can, that these funds can be accounted for effectively? Because if we're giving out this money, what is the criteria of the micro enterprise that they should actually obtain this money? Because we're still having issues of formality in this country. People still love to participate in the informal sector, and yet these are funds that are coming in to elevate that. So for me, that's really my biggest area of concern in line with that. I don't know what you perceive of it.
Well, of course, if you understand, actually, it's just that people need to understand what is a small business, what is a small, what is a medium, those SMEs, what is the definition, how much should a person start to invest,
Yes.
maybe call it a small enterprise. Well, you see, much as we are talking about informal, you can still be in the informal sector, but then you have a little bit knowledge on what you're doing. Yeah. So has to be, the private sector has to, people that are in charge of business, that head the business entities, have to go and really inform, train, and sensitize these people that are into these small businesses and how they can gain out of it. Because on a daily, there's someone that has started up something. So we shouldn't leave the fact that, yes, you could have sensitized a few people, maybe educated a few people, but what about someone who has gotten in today? Don't you think they need
that
to be educated on a few things? So that is what is killing us. We do not have business knowledge. We set up things for the purposes of getting out of a situation. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think that is what we're talking about. Also, the business legacies. In line of women, most businesses are not sustainable enough.
Yeah, they're not
live
sustainable.
Up to generation. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Okay, that's quite very interesting. Of course, we shall be coming back with further discussions still in relation to that. For this time, let's take a look at what's really transpired in there.
We have focused on business opportunities in key sectors such as agribusiness, sustainable mining, enabling infrastructure, and sustainable tourism. But also the key bottlenecks to trade and investment, such as finance and the business environment. The theme of our forum, Mr. President, is boosting trade and investment. And the objective with the forum is, as before, with the first and the second business forums in 2020 and 2022, to attract European investment in Uganda and to increase trade, and notably Ugandan export to the EU. We also have a sub-theme, you heard about it, what can Uganda gain from Global Gateway? And the Global Gateway, it is the European Union's global investment strategy for sustainable and inclusive growth in partner countries. Our trade and investment has developed in a remarkable way the last few years. When I look at the trade statistics, I can see a doubling of the Ugandan exports since 2020. And the EU's share of foreign direct investments in Uganda was a year ago more than 40%, or 1.2 billion euro, or more than 5 trillion Ugandan shillings. I think it's difficult to claim some kind of absolute causality, but I would want to believe, Mr. President, that the business forums have contributed somewhat to these impressive figures. On the trade side, we have a very healthy trade turnover, currently of 1.5 billion euro, or 6.2 trillion Ugandan shillings. And I really congratulate Uganda, because for more than a year, Uganda has had a positive trade balance with the European Union. In 2022, Uganda exported 800 million euro of goods to the European Union and imported 700 million euros. We know from this forum, and by looking at the outstanding Ugandan growth figures, that Uganda is open for business and has a lot to offer, and the European Union as well. With our trade agreement, we have quota-free and tariff-free exports from Uganda to Europe for all goods except for arms. So the lucrative European market is waiting for Uganda. And the European Union is committed to Ugandan growth and developments also in other ways, and we are proud to unveil today, as I told you as we were walking, Mr. President, 8 new Team Europe cooperation projects dedicated to promoting trade, business and decent employment in Uganda. The total value is more than 200 million euro, or 850 billion Ugandan shillings.
Since our first summit that was held in 2020, we've seen a marked increase in trade between Uganda and the EU. When we began these summits, the trade that Uganda was exporting to the EU was about 442 million euros. We're glad to report today that by the end of 2022, that figure had grown to 800 million euros. Now, the importance of these summits is that it gives a chance for us as the private sector and our partners as the EU to be able to meet the people who do the trade between our nations and to address the bottlenecks that they have. And to that end, at least things that we have worked on in particular, one of the things the private sector has worked on is export readiness. We have an export readiness program at PSFU that assists Ugandan companies get the required certifications, ISO certifications that ensure that we have access to these markets. So these trade summits are able to allow us to open up the bottlenecks and increase trade, as you have seen.
After explaining yesterday to many of you what the Global Gateway Strategy stands for, I'm happy that today we will move to concrete examples of what it is, and I'm extremely grateful for your time and your agreement to launch 8 projects worth more than 200 million euros for the real benefit of Ugandan citizens. And this example of clear answer to the questions, which is the one underlining this EU-Uganda Business Forum. We are addressing 5 key outstanding priorities in the field of green transition, energy, transport, digitalization, education and health. And on all those investment priorities, our overall objective is to create growth and jobs in your country. And this is what the 8 projects we will be launching in a few minutes are really aiming at. And all of those are done in full Team Europe with several member states, with several financial institutions from the European Union. And this Team Europe concept is made to focus on key priorities and increase the impact that we can have collectively as the European Union.
When we are talking about businesses, we should look at the level of profitability of businesses in this part of the world compared to Europe, compared to Asia and other investment destinations. I think the Uganda Investment Authority should be able to give you those figures. What are the profitability rates here compared to other places? In order to make profit, you need 3 elements. Number 1, you need a producer of a good or a service. Somebody who produces a product or a service. After you get a good or a service, the next challenge is to get a consumer, somebody who buys what you produce. The consumers who have got the ability to pay for the products. Now the third element is infrastructure. Infrastructure to link the producer of the good and the service and the consumer. That is like transport, communication, and so on. That's part of that infrastructure. But also infrastructure to enable the production of the goods and the services. That is electricity and so on. So that is the second, refrigeration, storage, and all that. What ability do they have to buy, to purchase what is produced? Now, the lack of dialogue in the world is part of the problem. And I really would like to, through the ambassadors here of Europe, to encourage them to tell their governments to engage in serious dialogue with all of us. We are here, we know what we are doing, and we are ready for dialogue, but we need dialogue, not just running around and misusing opportunities.
Well, of course, according to a report, financial services uptake indicates that only 11% of firms have a bank or line of credit. And of course, a proportion that is definitely less than of the average that is the countries in the sub-Saharan Africa. Now, most micro and small businesses, enterprises remain excluded. That is within the mainstream banking because the focus is definitely tends to be more on corporates and high net worth individuals. And I think that has been a challenge, focusing on corporates, high net worth individuals. Little do we know that in Africa, the biggest, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, talking about countries in the Central African Republic, the biggest contributors to the GDP are the micro enterprises, the Muntu. Those are the people that make brands. But in the Western world, corporates can make a brand.
Yeah.
But the low citizens in Africa are the ones that actually build up brands. And these are the participants into when it comes to the day-to-day transaction, hard cash, where the hard cash is spent mainly into people. Well, let's take a break. And of course, we are returning with business and entertainment on the sports.